You had one or two congressmen, Democrats, saying, listen, we can't beat him at the election, so let's impeach him. Right? Didn't you hear Al Green? That's a beauty. He's a real beauty, that guy. But he said very distinctively, it was all over the place. I don't know, they're trying to lose that tape, I guess.
I wouldn't call anything encouraging for Hillary Clinton at the moment, to be honest with you, my friend.
Wolf, the scene here is so different than it was a few hours ago when people were happy and relaxed.
Take a look at these numbers here. 21% say they'll be concerned. 37% say they'll be scared.
Now, as we follow Trump and the Patriots, we understand their agenda is to dismantle the central bank, the globalist system. And once Trump and the Patriots, they got into office, they started to work on this. And Trump and the Patriots, they've been rolling back a lot of regulations, rolling back taxes, rolling back quite a bit.
I just want to kiss off on trade here because Missouri is the 7th largest producer of soybeans in the country. You also have exposure to dairy as well as beef is really important to your economy. What do you need to see accomplished at the G7?
Well, I think that the president needs to continue to press hard to be able to get some fairness into the negotiations to make sure that we level the playing field.
Over the years, the United States has been losing hundreds of billions of dollars with the European Union, and we just want it to be a level playing field for our farmers, for our manufacturers, for everybody.
And the reason for all this is to prepare us from when the central bank system is pushed aside and we transition into a new economic system.
Moving to a different issue, this year Facebook announced its plan to develop a new cryptocurrency called Libra. While the SEC is one of a number of regulators who would have jurisdiction over Libra, can you speak to how the Libra announcement has affected how the SEC and other regulators are working to be responsive to and innovative to market developments and trends like cryptocurrencies?
Sure. And I appreciate the question, and the question highlights what happened with that announcement. And whether I'm not going to speak about the particular product, it's not appropriate for me to do so, but the announcement was a focal point for regulators of different types to recognize that digitization and the digitization of the plumbing and other aspects of our financial system, including payment transfers, etc., it is coming. What I'll say, just the natural economic forces that it unleashes, taking fat out of the system, for lack of a better term, it's happening. Now we have to recognize that that's happening, recognize our mission, safety and soundness, investor protection, fair markets, and ensure that as that digitization takes place, we're being true to those principles. But we should not be fighting that digitization, because if we fight it, it will go around us.
Well, thank you. That mirrors my feelings on it, and I assume that when you say it is coming...
I'm sorry, Senator, it's here.
This year.
It's here. It is here already.
Yeah, I see. It's here. Yeah, it is here.
Global outlook remains precarious with a synchronized slowdown and an uncertain recovery. At 3% growth, there is no room for policy mistakes and an urgent need for policymakers to support growth.
Now, the stock market is key.
You want to know what's driving this market to new all-time highs? Dow gaining 133 points today, S&P climbing 0.56%, NASDAQ pole vaulting 1.01%. It's not the Fed. It's not the trade talks. It's demand.
Buy.
Yes, demand for money.
Buy.
Demand for homes. Demand for data processing. Demand for cancer drugs. Demand for programming. Demand for fabulous cell phones. Demand for planes. And of course, perhaps most important, demand for stocks.
And I know we said in the past, the stock market, it is not a gauge of the economy, which it is not. But Trump, the Patriots, they knew that the mainstream media, the deep state, the central bank, over the many, many years, they've been using the stock market as the gauge.
Which side are you on? Are you on the whole, we're looking at a global slowdown, this isn't good, we need fiscal stimulus, or are you of the mind of like, we could be bottoming out here in the PMI as things could get better?
You know, Liz, I think we're definitely in a slowdown. There's no doubt about that. And it is synchronized across the world economy. But I think it's coming to an end.
And Trump and the Patriots, they knew this. And they also knew by lowering rates and by starting stimulus, that would boost the entire market. And what are we seeing today? We're seeing the market rise. And it's continually moving up.
That's exactly what our next guest said would happen when the biggest bubble ever finally burst in the bond market. So now what? Is this it? Bonds, it's over? The trade's over?
Did we burst? We better keep this thing going because that was a pretty big pop, you know?
Yeah, I was there.
So 2008, that's when everybody was into derivatives and, you know, pumping this baby up. And it did nearly come down. Some Lehman came down and Bear Stearns was wiped out. And it was like this. So what did Bernanke and those guys do? More. So after 2008, they just kept pumping it, and it's getting worse. So now we have the stock market, this one area of the economy, all-time highs, floating on fake money. Trump gave us a tax cut in America. This thing gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So what happened in 2008, they stopped it by printing money. So they call it the Great Recession. But they didn't really fix anything. You know, derivatives went from 700 trillion to 1.2 trillion today. Twice as much. And that is net. You know, doesn't tell the whole story. So when the recession hit, the PhD standard came in. That was Bernanke, you know, and then Yellen. The PhD said, they have PhDs. Well, it's no different than long-term capital, LTCM. They had Nobel Prize winners, people like my poor dad, academics, you know. So anyway, this is what's going on in the world economy today. So the baby boomers are going to retire now. Student loans are bust. So, do you have to be an economist to say what's going to happen? Because we're fighting a 12-year war now. Entitlements are going through the roof. National debt to GDP is 109 in America, 109%. 90% is too late. We have to keep printing now. So this is called bubblenomics, and this is what's going to happen. Got it?
I got it.
Is that economics 101?
Scary stuff.
It's happened throughout history.
Well, look, the rules have been rewritten over the last several years. And, you know, like it or not, central banks are, you know, perhaps an uncomfortable, you know, player in the financial markets. But, you know, we haven't had an accident yet. And the assumption is that we will continue to potentially not have an accident. That's certainly what the market's saying. And the way we look at it, if anything, the last several weeks have been good because the ECB and now the Fed are telling you that there need to be other ways of keeping the economy moving forward, whether it's fiscal stimulus from Germany or resolving the trade war. The message today was fix the trade war.
What does it tell you? Because the Fed's perspective is that, look, we just need to unclog the plumbing here. The house isn't collapsing. Would you agree?
Well, I think if the house wasn't collapsing, that we would see some rationality begin to re-enter the picture. Clearly, the bond market players are trying to push the Fed and truly see whether or not they believe that the two facilities that are in place are capable of holding the federal funds rate within the intended band. we'll see. We'll see first thing tomorrow morning whether this works or not. But I was very disappointed in Jay Powell's painting in the press conference that this all had to do with quarterly corporate tax payments and a Treasury settlement that the entire market, everybody in the market, knew was coming. There's something else at work here.
I mean, Peter, do you think that the China, I mean, you don't think it's our number one problem right now, you say it's the Fed, but does this China-US trade war, could this precipitate a stock market crash?
Well, there are a lot of things that could precipitate a crash, and the market's headed lower. And I think the market underreacted on Monday to the news. If people actually perceived the dangers that are there. I mean, Mark, you talk about trade is not as important to us. I would say that the United States depends more on imports than any other country. We don't produce most of the manufactured stuff that we consume. All of it has to be imported. We rely more than any other country on foreign savings. I mean, we have tremendous debt in the United States. The federal government, corporations, individuals, local governments, states, and we have minimal savings. So we have to borrow money from the rest of the world in order to fund the economy. That's what's keeping this whole thing afloat. Donald Trump in his press conference the other day mentioned about once upon a time when America had a special economy. We actually had a strong economy where we actually manufactured and we exported. And we did that because we had limited government, we had sound money, we had few regulations, we had low taxes. We're not that nation today. And the only thing that's been keeping us afloat has been the ability to live on the productivity of foreigners and the savings of foreigners. And this relationship is in jeopardy right now. When Donald Trump says that the Chinese have been giving a free ride, he's got it backwards. We are living off of China and a lot of other countries who supply us with stuff that we cannot produce and lend us money that we have not saved so that we can live beyond our means and that we don't have to save and we don't have to make the capital investments.
Peter, you're making so many statements that are extreme. You sound like Donald Trump.
You know, some of the people that were most loyal to me are people that I didn't think would be. Some of the people that were least loyal to me are people that I think I would have treated them differently. I think I would have treated different groups differently. I would have wiped the floor with the guys that weren't loyal, which I will now do, which is great. You know, I love getting even with people. But
World Trade Organization, it made China. China made themselves. They did a good job. But they ripped off our country for years. And with our money and World Trade Organization backing, and then they took advantage of the rules of the World Trade Organization. And I'm being nice when I say took advantage, much more than took advantage. They went up like a rocket ship. They were flatlined for 100 years. And then one day, World Trade Organization, a terrible move. And you know, we were losing all our cases until I came along. We were losing all our cases in the World Trade Organization. Almost every case we lost. They thought we were stupid. They were the ones ruling. And then I came along. Now we're winning a lot of cases because they know that they're not on very solid ground. We will leave if we have to. And all of a sudden, we're winning a lot of cases. We're winning most of our cases. And it's only because of attitude, because we know that they have been screwing us for years, and it's not going to happen any longer. They get it. They get it. So they're giving us victories. They're giving us victories. And I'd like to use a different word, but there's no word that's quite as, right? There's no word that's quite as descriptive. I'd like to, but that's exactly what they were doing. They were taking advantage of us for years and years, and now they understand that if it's not going to be fair, it's not going to be at all. We don't need it. We don't need it.
Since its foundation, the World Trade Organization, the WTO, has acted as the global trade referee. Today, its appellate body, the WTO-AB, is on the verge of collapse. The United States has been delaying appointments to the WTO-AB since the year 2017. This could effectively cripple the WTO, including the future of global trade.
We are talking with Roberto Azevedo. He is Director General of the WTO. Are there discussions going with the United States? Is there any possibility with Mr. Lighthizer, for example, to actually reconcile the problems so that the United States will go back in and start approving some members to this panel?
I think we could. But the reality is that the grievances that they have expressed, the U.S. administration, concerning the appellate body function, they're pretty significant. So we're not talking about a mere adjustment here or there. I think the kind of things that they have been talking about would require pretty significant changes.
Thousands of factories have been stolen from our country. But these voiceless Americans now have a voice in the White House. Under my administration, the theft of American prosperity will end. We're going to defend our industry and create a level playing field for the American worker, finally.
What we need at this point in time is understand a little bit better what would take care of those concerns that the Americans have been expressing, and also whether, the type of things that are needed would be acceptable to everybody else.
We're tracking a lot of reaction to the new trade deal between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. So what changes are under the proposed agreement? Here are some of the highlights.
You know that the United States and President Trump viewed the old NAFTA as being a flawed agreement. It clearly was an agreement that needed to be upgraded in very important ways. When you think of the gadgets and the phones and the things that we have, none of which existed when this went into effect. And also, over a period of time, every agreement gets outmoded, things happen that you don't expect. And the United States and the President viewed it as a very unbalanced agreement.
We created jobs for other places, for other nations, and we sacrificed so many, 60,000 plants. Millions and millions of jobs were lost during, I call them the stupid years, but now we're back into the really smart years. We had the smart years, now we're the really smart years. They were the stupid years. What they were doing was incredible. NAFTA, one of the world's worst trade deals ever. I know a couple of others, we've been involved in them too. World Trade Organization, that's a beauty. You don't know as much about that, but NAFTA was a disaster for this country, and we're going to be replacing that very soon, hopefully with the USMCA, and that's going to be something really, really special.
And I don't want to dwell on that, but that's how we got here in the first place. But the President also thought that having a strong North American market was extremely important to the United States. It was the key to having our workers, our manufacturing workers, our farmers, and our ranchers succeed and prosper.
So right now in the U.S., for instance, and you used the statistic, from 2006 to 16 or so, the digital economy grew 4 times faster. We saw a terrific labor print this morning, right, in terms of unemployment. And while you wouldn't connect those directly, the U.S. has embraced digital, U.S. has embraced technology, as well as anybody else in the world, has driven a lot of jobs, a lot of job growth, and a lot of value creation. So the U.S. has embraced technology and has an ability now to lead again as we go into the next round of digital trade discussions to try to lead the world into getting a global agreement on how we want to interact.
Congress will soon vote on my new trade deal, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, or USMCA. After years of waiting, many, many years, many, many decades, they've been looking for this. And then we got it done, and we've been waiting for a long time for Nancy Pelosi to announce USMCA. And she did it on the same day that they announced that they are going to impeach.
There is no question, of course, that this trade agreement is much better than NAFTA. But in terms of our work here, it is infinitely better than what was initially proposed by the administration. And I credit our chairman, Richie Neal, for helping us navigate all of these places. The unity of our caucus on specific priorities.
They announced impeachment. A few guys standing behind her. They announced impeachment. And then an hour later, she announced that she's going to do USMCA. You know why? It's a huge deal. And it plays down the impeachment because they're embarrassed by the impeachment. And our poll numbers have gone through the roof because of her stupid impeachment.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Together, they form what's known as the BRICS nations. The acronym was originally coined at the start of the new millennium. It referenced the 4 emerging markets demonstrating rapid growth and vast economic potential. When South Africa joined in 2010, the S was added to the grouping.
Let me just say that we have it under control. We're watching it very carefully, and we're going to be very, very. We're watching it very carefully, including other countries that may or may not be playing games. We're watching it very closely.
But you know, if Russia is talking with USA or Guaido, what can you tell about us?
Just put this in the back of your mind. It's all going to be fine. We know everything that you said, and it's all going to be fine. We're very much involved. We very much know what's going on, and we're very much involved. Okay?
Of the football, actually. Mr. President, I'll give this ball to you, and now the ball is in your court.
The Chinese are pulling out all the stops. They're going to have all the lavish dinners, the bilateral meeting with President Xi Jinping, all of the grandeur, the pomp and circumstance that you'd expect for any state visit. But they also said they're going to be adding some personal touches. So he's going to be taking a tour of the Forbidden City. There have been reports that he is going to be the first American president to actually be hosted by President Xi or by a Chinese president in the Forbidden City. So that is also another personal touch.
I think in light of all of the things going on, and you know what I mean by that, the fake news, the Comeys of the world, all of the bad things that went on, it's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all.
We have some breaking news from the Justice Department now. The highly anticipated Inspector General report is now out.
Well, they fabricated evidence and they lied to the courts. And they did all sorts of things to have it go their way. And this was something that we can never allow to happen again. The report actually, and especially when you look into it and the details of the report, are far worse than anything I would have even imagined. What they were doing and what they would have done if I didn't make a certain move that was a very important move, because it would have been even worse if that's possible. And they might have been able to succeed. This was an overthrow of government. This was an attempted overthrow, and a lot of people were in on it, and they got caught. They got caught red-handed. And I look forward to the Durham report, which is coming out in the not-too-distant future. He's got his own information, which is this information plus.
Trump and his team are calling it investigating the investigators. Now, last week, we learned that the investigation into the origins of the Russia probe is now criminal, headed by U.S. Attorney John Durham out of Connecticut. It started as an administrative review back in May, but now that has changed. The president and his supporters, they say that now Barr and now Durham will have the ability to impanel a grand jury, issue subpoenas, and file criminal charges.
We'll let the chips fall where they may. I think they all know John Durham's reputation, and we'll just see how it turns out. But I do want to say that one of the reasons Mr. Durham is able to make the kind of progress he's making is because Director Wray and his team at the FBI have just been outstanding in the support and responsiveness they've given.
What are you going to tell your grandchildren? What are you going to tell your children 20, 25 years from now? What did you do, Grandpa? What did you do, Grandma, during the greatest transformation of motherfucking wealth in the history of the world? What did you do? Other than sit on your fucking hands. What did you do to take advantage of the greatest transformation of wealth in the history of the planet? What did you do? Not a fucking thing.
Both fiat money and gold are inferior to Bitcoin for one very simple reason, that with a Bitcoin transaction, it is also simultaneously the settlement. You don't have that with fiat, you don't have that with gold. If I do a transaction in gold, the gold has to be verified. If I do that in fiat, that fiat has a verification level, and we see that in the repo market. Because banks don't trust each other, repo rates are skyrocketing because you have to settle these trades. Until a trade is settled, it doesn't really count. With Bitcoin, when you do a Bitcoin transaction, the transaction is the settlement. It is the settlement. That's what makes it better money than gold or fiat. It's just as scarce, it's just as divisible, it's just as portable, it's just as desirable, except it has a built-in settlement layer. It is part of the transaction. That's what these frickin' guys don't understand. Like, Peter Schiff, he's completely clueless when it comes, because he's never spent even 5 minutes looking at it. He just mouths the same thing over and over and over again. He's an uninformed imbecile. He's an imbecile.
I gotta get you both.
Imbecile.
You feel better now?
Yes.
A mission focused on enabling payments everywhere, every way, for everyone. Now I want to focus on this for a moment because the most important word for us in this statement is enable. Many of you in this room today are our customers, our partners, and it is through you, it is with you that we are partnering to enable these payments. We aren't out there trying to sign up customers directly. We see the opportunity to bring interoperability across payment networks, across borders, to fundamentally change the way cross-border and cross-network payments flow.
Again, to tell you a story, 3 years ago, we actually experimented with 12 banks across different geographies who did not have pre-funding relationship with each other. We gave them a bunch of digital asset called XRP and asked them to use it to see if it works for cross-border payments as a bridge currency. They came back to us after 6 months and they said, look, it works beautifully, but we cannot use this. And there are two issues with this. Number one, it's highly volatile, so we cannot use it. Number two, my regulator will never allow me to use this. There is no risk weighting to this, and it's too volatile. There is no way the central banks will allow me to use this. This was in 2015-16. So what we did was, and this is 3-4 years ago, before the whole concept of stable coins came into being. So we went back to the drawing board and came up with a new product, as I mentioned, ODL, on-demand liquidity. And basically what that product does is, through that product, banks do not have to hold a digital asset on their books. They could leverage that product, connect with a digital asset exchange, which, mind you, is fully licensed and supervised, and then leverage that exchange to source liquidity in real time. And because the entire transaction happens in less than 30 seconds, because of the speed of the ledger, the volatility risk is taken care of. So we removed the two big concerns that banks and payment providers had and almost productized it in a way, and then we launched the product last year in October.
I'm not going to speak about the particular product. It's not appropriate for me to do so. But the announcement was a focal point for regulators of different types to recognize that digitization and the digitization of the plumbing and other aspects of our financial system, including payment transfers, et cetera, it is coming. What I'll say, just the natural economic forces that it unleashes, taking fat out of the system, for lack of a better term, it's happening. Now we have to recognize that that's happening, recognize our mission, safety and soundness, investor protection, fair markets, and ensure that as that digitization takes place, we're being true to those principles. But we should not be fighting that digitization, because if we fight it, it will go around us.
So we went back to the drawing board and came up with a new product, as I mentioned, ODL, on-demand liquidity. And basically what that product does is, through that product, banks do not have to hold a digital asset on their books.
Fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's gotta be biblical. Inevitable.
On this solemn day, I recall that the first order of business for members of